welcome to McLeod Insights. I'm Robert Bowen, Director of Product Marketing at McLeod Software, and your host. Today's episode is a conversation between our customer, Houston Vaughn, President and COO of P&S Transportation. Houston is being interviewed by Seth Clevenger of Transport Topics. In this conversation, you will learn how P&S successfully adapted to the COVID-19 crisis. Seth and Houston also discuss the role software and analytics plays at P&S Transportation. And finally, Houston discusses the company's guiding principles and their path to success in integrating their many acquisitions in the past few years. We hope you enjoyed the broadcast.
Well, hello, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Seth Clevenger, Managing Editor of Features at Transport Topics, and it's great to be with you, remotely at least, to host this breakout session at McLeod Software's 2020 User Conference. In this session, I'm going to be speaking with Houston Vaughn, President and Chief Operating Officer at P&S Transportation, a major flatbed carrier based out of Birmingham, Alabama. Like everyone else in the trucking industry, P&S has had to adapt this year to the challenges and disruptions caused by the coronavirus pandemic. So we're going to talk about how they were able to adjust their operations to keep their drivers busy while also taking steps to help mitigate the spread of the virus. And later on, we'll also get into the investments that P&S has made in technology and how that has helped the company successfully integrate businesses it has acquired over the years. So let's get started. First off, it's great to be here and have this conversation with you, Houston. Thanks for taking this time to share your insights.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate it. I guess the thing that I'll miss through this whole conference is the interaction with the people out in the audience. I've always liked the questions that they ask and try to answer those, and they come up with some very good questions. And so maybe we can answer their questions before they ask them this time around.
We'll do our best to do exactly that, and definitely a different format, but we'll all make the most of it, just as we're all, adapting in this very unusual time for not only our industry but really the whole world. But speaking of that topic, let's just go back to the early days of the pandemic. Of course, many trucking and logistics companies moved their back office employees to a work from home environment in the early days of the pandemic. And at P&S, you already had a disaster recovery program in place to help manage that and set up a rotation for remote work. So just take us through that process and how you responded, when this first hit.
I guess a few years ago, 12 or 13 years ago, Birmingham got hit with a lot of tornadoes and some bad weather. And I guess back then we decided, hey, we're going to get something going because we don't know if our building is going to be standing the next morning. So we made the effort and the decision to have everybody that works for it to have laptops. And we said, okay, this is part of our recovery. If something happens, everybody's going to have their laptops at home, and all they got to do is open them up and go to work. And that was kind of our thinking and our philosophy behind it, and it's worked. Over the years, I've had a few people leave their laptops at their desk, and I would get them and take them and put them in my office, and they would panic the next morning, but they didn't do it again. So we kind of had a little teaching session there. But, when this happened, we had the technology, and because we had some people working at home, and we had the systems and we had the processes. So, but the test was, can we take everybody? Can everybody in our company work remotely? That's something that you have a disaster recovery program, but you don't really test it 100% that way. But we took one weekend and we did. We took everybody had their laptops, everybody signed on at the same time. And if you think about it, that means that the McLeod operating system that we have, all the third parties that are integrated in that system, all had to work. And we had over 750 users at the time, and it worked. So we knew, okay, now we can get started. Now we can know that we can actually put a plan in place. And we were like everybody else. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen. We didn't know how bad the virus was, how quick it was going to spread, and this type of thing. So we were doing just like everybody else. We were looking at the CDC guidelines and say, okay, we need to do this, need to do that, and this type of thing. So we decided to break our company up, basically, and say, okay, we're going to do everything in teams. You're going to have team A, they're going to come in and work for a week. Team B will be working at home. And then team B will come back in and work in the office, and team A will be working at home. The whole thinking was if somebody got infected and it was spreading in the office, it would only hurt half of our company. And we did this at upper management. I actually live in Nashville, and I stayed in Nashville for 2 solid months, and we separated. And we, of course, all of this everything was happening. We didn't know what to do, So we came back and we looked at our offices and said, okay, let's make sure everybody's sitting 6 feet away. We put plexiglass on our cubicles to make sure that there's no interference there. And here again, now we're still working teams A and team B. We ask everybody to not walk around with their masks. I mean, we want them to walk around, but they want them to have masks. We didn't want them to go from department to department like we normally do. We want them to stay in their particular areas. And of course, my style of management, I like to go around and just talk to everybody. I don't much like emails and all this good stuff. So that kind of put a binder on some of us, but we got through it. We had the hand sanitizers. That was a big deal. We wanted everybody to have access to all of that and make sure that it's working. We actually marked our offices off and said, people can't go here. We don't want you in this area. You got to stay there. We didn't want any conference rooms. We cut all of those off. Unfortunately, we cut the lunch tables off. We had to cut the driver's room out. I guess that was the downside, is that we asked the drivers to stay in the reception area. His dispatcher, the people he had to communicate with, actually went in there and they could talk to the driver and sit down, but the driver's room was actually cut off. This is for a while, just when we first got started, until we made sure everything was, we got everything under control. But we took, I don't know if it was extreme measures, but I think it worked. At the end of the day, it was a situation where we didn't want anybody to get infected, especially in our environment, because we wanted them to be able to work. We wanted to make sure we kept our drivers working. And I think we were pretty successful in doing that. Like I said, we have an open door policy here. The thing that hurts me to see the most is our drivers can't come up and see me, come up and see Scott Smith, our CEO, and just tell us what's going on out there. So, but we're getting over there, and I think everything's getting better. If you look at today, where are we today? Today, we've probably got all our operations people. They're not running the team A and team B scenarios. Our maintenance department's not, but they are 6 feet apart. They have all the sanitation. We still don't have conferences in conference rooms. We still don't have lunch rooms, and we ask people to stay apart. Some workers that don't have to be in the office, we give them that option. If you want to come in, that's fine. If not, that's fine. We still have some departments that are running the A and B. We have 15 different departments at P&S, and each one of them are basically kind of filling out what they can and can't do. So it's a lot of different things going, a lot of moving parts. But, at the end of the day, we got close to 5,000 employees, and we've had only around 50 that's tested positive, and less than 12 drivers. So we're real tickled with that outcome. So I think we did a pretty good job of getting ahead of this thing. And actually, we're still in it today. It hasn't changed. It's still a challenge every day we come in.
Yeah, you described all the steps you've taken in the back office and at your company locations to do what you had to do to protect your employees and take the appropriate safety measures. Of course, drivers obviously are essential workers on the front lines, and there's no way to do that job remotely. They have to be on the road. So just talk about the processes and procedures you put in place to help protect your drivers while they were, away from the company, out on the road, out at a shipper or a consignee, and steps like PPE and social distancing when they're out in the field.
When all this started, of course, the drivers, they wanted some kind of, direction. Hey, what am I supposed to do? Our driver managers want, what am I supposed to tell my driver? So we kind of had I want to say not classes, but we have some teaching moments there with our DMs and saying, hey, listen, our drivers are in the best position of anybody. They're in the cab of that truck. They're already isolated. They've already got themselves quarantined. They're in the best place they can. They don't have to be around anybody. So that's the thing we emphasize. When you get to a shipper, stay in your truck. Don't go to truck stops. Don't sit around the restaurants. Just get what you need and get out. When you get to a shipper, make sure you put your gloves on. Make sure you're wearing your mask, stay away from them. When you have to sign a bill, make sure you're using your pen, not theirs. So these type of little things that we just kept emphasizing. And, only having less than a dozen's gotten infected, I think we've done a pretty good job on that. When you get to the orientation piece here again, there was another area that we said, we got to change this. Orientation is going to change. And the way I was looking at it, and I was telling our people, hey, it's going to change forever. Some of the things that's happened it is what it is. It's not coming back. So we did a lot of online training. We've done some online paperwork. We brought, instead of sending them to the doctor for drug screens and physicals, we had them to come here. So anything to alleviate them having to travel or see people and not keeping the distance that we've taken that. But we made sure that anytime they walk into a terminal, that they've got masks, they got hand sanitizers they can take with them. They need any kind of gloves or anything like that. We made sure we provided all of that with them. And, we also, I guess I don't want to say pound in their head, but we also kept bringing up the CDC guidelines that this is what you need to do. This is what they're telling us. Keep doing this. It's working. And like I said, with less than a dozen that's been infected so far, we're tickled. And I think the ones that, probably got infected are, unfortunately, they've probably gone to some funerals. That's sad to say. They've been to weddings and at church. Unfortunately, there's places that people need to go and they want to go. But, in this time and age, it's tough. It's really tough.
It is. And, thank you for all that detail. And, I also want to talk about the business side of all this, because, of course, it's been quite a disruptive event. And it's been different for different companies and in different sectors of the economy. Some shippers have seen demand just plummet, at least in the early days of the pandemic, and others have actually experienced an increase in business. And of course, that's really tested the flexibility of carriers and 3PLs. So I'm curious to hear about how the pandemic affected your customers at P&S. How were you able to shift capacity to keep your drivers busy when it was so much in flux?
P&S Transportation, that's, I guess you could say, it's the mother company. We also have another 12 to 13 different operation companies that fall under the P&S Logistics umbrella. And most of the other companies are assigned to something. They're assigned to some sector in the industry, and they're assigned to a particular customer and this type of thing. But we'll just talk about P&S for a minute, and I'll go back to the other ones. But P&S is what you call an irregular route carrier. And we don't have a whole lot of traffic lanes. We do go to a lot of job sites and hauling pipe and these type of things. And, you go back to the Great Recession of 2008, we were really heavy in the steel and the pipe business. And we weren't that much in the building industry. Well, the building material industry, at the time, it went down very hard. And but this time, I guess you could say we got lucky. We were just completely opposite. We were real strong in building materials this year and this time. And we had, of course, steel in the pipe and this type of thing also. But with building materials, for some reason, it exploded. I guess everybody wanted to remodel their house since they had to start staying there. And wanted to build that extra room on, feel like to be safe, that they weren't taking a vacation, this type of thing. So building materials actually exploded. But with our model, with our irregular route model, our trucks, we can take them in and out. So the ones that were, say, down in Texas moving oil and gas pipe and this type of thing, we're able to move those around the country and help the building industry. So P&S kept pretty busy. And we're still busy today. I just hope this building materials hangs on. We did have some companies that it's tied to an industry, like Loudoun County up in East Tennessee. It's about a 300 trucking company, 300 units. It's tied to the aluminum industry. Well, when Alcoa and those guys shut their doors, these guys, hey, it was tough. We had some drivers that we furloughed. We had some drivers that wanted to be furloughed. We had some drivers that got on a flatbed and started moving building materials. So they had an option if they wanted to. But here again, if it was out of their norm, we gave them the choice. And in the steel industry, one of it comes to mind is HS Express. They're very heavy in the automotive industry up there. The same thing happened to them. They're around 25-30% down. But overall, we were able to adjust just because of the sectors that stayed busy through this. We didn't haul groceries and this type of thing. So when some of the van carriers and stuff that, some of it just went completely blank on them. Well, it didn't happen in our end of it, in our industry. So I guess you could say we got lucky in that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was good. You're more flexible than some of your peers in the industry. Other companies that have more dedicated operations and maybe were hit harder. I do want to ask you about one trend that may be picking up a little bit in light of the pandemic, and that's this move toward electronic bills of lading. There's been for years at least some push for on the part of carriers and some shippers to move toward electronic documents, but there's also some challenges there, and many shippers are resistant to that. Are you seeing any sort of change, any sort of acceleration, given the current emphasis on reducing contact and social distancing?
We have been involved with certain large customers before the virus actually hit. So I think that technology with blockchain and what everybody's trying to do of keeping the paperless trail, I think people are on it now. But when this happened, we did do some testing with some other customers, and some of the problems, of course, I talk about job sites, and we do haul a lot of stuff to job sites, and so we tried just give you an example. We said, okay, let's just try this and see if it happens and see if it works. And we just took an iPad and said, okay, if he had to sign it, what would happen? Can we transmit it? Most of these job sites are out in the middle of nowhere. There's no internet connection. So that was a problem. That was an issue. And some of the customers just said, it's just the hassle factor exceeds the benefit. So we're not going to try it this time. I think it'll be a lot more successful with customers that have carriers that are running traffic lanes or running from A to B and B back to A, where they've got the internet connections and all this stuff. Works out pretty fine. When you run an irregular carrier and you go into different locations, it's tough to make it work that way. I was just talking to our IT group the other day, and we've gotten with McLeod, and they've got a data product right now that's working on this. And we're going to be one of the companies that try to help design this with them. So I'm tickled for that. But, at the end of the day, where the phone apps that we have now, where we're able to take a picture of that, that paper, and you still have that one piece of paper somebody's got to sign, I guess, for the contract. But other than that, it's going paperless pretty quick. And I think at the end of the day, when this is over with, when we have vaccines and all this good stuff, I think we'll still continue this. I think it's part of the industry that they need and that they want. I know on our side of it, if I can bill it 4 or 5 hours earlier, I'd be tickled me to death. I can get quicker cash flow. But I honestly believe that this is one of the areas that's going to continue, and it's going to be something that's going to be the outcome of the pandemic.
I'd like to continue the technology conversation here a little bit. You've already given some examples of how you responded to the pandemic and what you've invested in at your company. But I'd like to dive into a few more details. Are there any specific software tools or features or maybe analytics capabilities that you found especially impactful on your business, especially at a time like this?
I guess Zoom is one of the bigger ones that we're using today. We don't use Zoom that much in our operation. We started using Teams, and Teams is a product that's been very successful for us. And actually, I see it today that some of the conferences that we used to, some of the where you used to have to go visit somebody, I think with this technology and everybody's kind of getting used to it, that you'll see a lot less travel. You'll see a lot less people going to see customers because they say, hey, let's just do a Teams meeting and get this over with. And you don't have to come all the way out here, and I don't have to sit and listen to you for another 30 minutes. I can cut you off or whatever. But, if you look at what we did of putting everybody basically remotely at one time, that technology is pretty cool, because you got to think of everything that had to happen. We use the McLeod system, and I'm not trying to sell the McLeod system, but like I've said for years, we weren't able to grow like we did without them. And just to kind of give you a little background on how we use McLeod, everybody uses it the same. We call it the McDonald's theory. If you dispatch a truck in New Jersey and you dispatch a truck in Texas, it's all done the same. So that way, when you have processes that simple, you can get outside the norm a little bit, just like we did when everybody started working remotely. You knew that all the third-party interfaces that McLeod has for you, you knew all of that would work, and that all the cloud technology that you have, like all our emails are on the cloud. So you knew all of that would work. So I think having the flexibility to be able to do what we did, and it even gets better as you go, because we know at the end of the day that people can work from home, and if they want to, and if they're just as efficient, they're probably going to be working from home. So having that technology and that flexibility and the access to your systems, and there's a lot of things that had to happen to make that work. I mean, McLeod had to do a whole lot. They had to do their part. Then AT&T and all the bandwidth that you had to get to make it work. Verizon, whoever that you were using. But anyway, I think it's come out pretty good. I think it's and unfortunately, a lot of carriers don't have the capability to do what we did. But I think they can take it in sections. I think they can take it a little bit at a time. They can get their laptop. They can use their home internet service and not do what we did on some of the pipes and stuff to get the data to them. But I think if they do it and have the flexibility to do it, they'll be a better carrier.
Sure. And just shifting gears a little bit, I did want to talk about another topic, and that's consolidation in the trucking industry. And P&S has been a part of that. Your company has completed some significant acquisitions over the years, and your company now has more than a dozen operating units, different companies, and of course, it's no simple task to bring a new company, a new business into your organization. And there, for many reasons, and IT technology is definitely one of those reasons. So how has P&S been able to manage that process successfully with an acquisition?
Well, they're all a little different. Every one of them is a little different, but they all start the same. When we look at purchasing a company or merging with a company, we like to say, we look at their culture. Do they fit into our company? We don't. If you look at they're paying their drivers, a different way we pay our drivers. If their trucks are set 75 miles an hour, the different style of truck they're using. If none of that fits what we do, we just walk away. There's no way to make the deal. So we look at the culture, and we tell them from day one, hey, we want you to keep your culture. We don't want to mess with it. But we also have some what we call core values. That, hey, we've got these dozen core values that we want you to keep your culture, but we want you to help us integrate these 12 core values. And, it works. These core values are a lot of times the same thing that they do every day. So just like number one is, safety is our number one, and our drivers are our number one asset. That's usually on the top of everybody's list. So, and then when we get into the transaction itself, one thing that we do, we put everybody on the McLeod system day one. That first load's moved, it's in the McLeod system. And, when you got a 250, 300 unit carrier, that takes a lot of work beforehand. And it takes a lot of dedication on everybody's part. We try to have a trainer of 1 to 2. So if I got 2 DMs, I've got one of our driver managers with them, holding their hand, walking them through it, making sure they understand it. But that's a big change for them. Now, when you go in and put somebody on the McLeod system and they've never been on a TMS system before, or they're, say, on TMW, or even on an older version of McLeod, you're ripping that Band-Aid off. You're messing with their world. There's no doubt. And we tell them, hey, we're going to rock your world with this. It's going to happen, but we're going to have people there to support you through this. Because in our model, basically, every one of these operating units are run separate. They've got some kind of identity. That's the reason the driver wants to work for them. They do something a little different. But just for instance, our Blair Logistics is an owner-operator lease purchase operation that runs a regional type market. P&S is a company truck operation that runs irregular routes. But at the end of the day, your HR department, your recruiting department, your maintenance department, all these 16 different departments that we have are all run together. Now, each company might have a department within their company, but they're all married together. So they're all integrated. And I think that's a big part of it. We're huge on in being transparent. In other words, we want the other companies to see what the other ones are doing because they can help each other. We don't want them competing against each other. We want them helping each other. And that's part of the culture that we have, and it works. So I think one of the biggest things that we do in an acquisition is that we do bring the McLeod system on, and we tell them, hey, it's going to be a big change for you, but we do two other things. We try to keep all of their employees, and the biggest thing that we do, we don't change anything with the driver. Whatever that driver's doing, whoever he's talking to, we do not touch that. We do not change it. We've gone as far as making sure that the checks that the driver gets are the same color if we had to change bikes. So it's pretty unique, but it works.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. And we're running a little bit low on time, but I want to squeeze a couple more in here. Is there any other advice? I don't want to ask you to share the secret recipe, but is there any additional advice that you'd be comfortable sharing with your peers in the industry on how to make the most of their technology investments to really improve their businesses? Anything you've learned along the way that you would recommend to the audience?
The things that I see today, and I've been in the business a long time. I've been in over 35 years, probably 40 years now. I can remember when we used to be tickled to death when we got a report that was a month old. And then we really got good and made them a weekly. And then, of course, we started getting this daily report. But now, with the technology that we have, everything's real time. I mean, I'm here referring back to McLeod again with rapid alerts. I tell people that's the best thing since spell check I've ever seen. When you can get an alert that something's fixing to happen and stop it real time, you've done something. Just like somebody builds a load and he's taking a load to a bad area and he made a bad decision. Well, we can stop that right now where that driver's not all aggravated us and this type of thing. So I think the real-time information is huge. The data that we're accumulating. Now, if you look at it, everybody wants data. Every department wants their data. Then once they get that data, they want everybody to react to it. So that could be issues. You can overload your people with data, and you got to be careful there. I'll give you an example. Our safety department's done a great job of putting dashboards together, and the DMs have got all this information about the drivers. They got the drive cam information, they got the braking information, everything that you want to know what that driver's doing. But it's so much information. There's no way a driver manager could take that information and talk to his driver and get it all done and get his job done. So we had to say, well, let's slow down here a little bit. Let's take this data, Bo, and let's really, what do we really need to talk about? So I guess what I'm trying to say is to everybody, you've got the data, you got to use it, but be careful. Be very careful with it and make sure you use the data wisely. But if you don't use that data, you will get behind. I mean, the rates change every day now. How much you look in the spot market, how much you use in contract rates, what's your percentage of all this stuff that goes into running an operation. You got to have that current information. But don't overwhelm your people with data and they'll just stop using it completely. I guess that's the biggest thing I can tell people. And I see that in our organization every day. And I have to just remind people, you've got data. Let's just use the most important part of it.
Well, thank you for all this input and all these insights, Houston. I think this has been a very helpful session for all the attendees to learn about kind of best practices on how to respond to a disruptive event like this, and also just more general knowledge on how to really make technology work for your organization. Maybe even if you're bringing new pieces into the organization. So I think that's a good stopping point. So thanks again, Houston, for participating in this interview. Really enjoyed it, and thanks for all your time.
Well, thank y'all. I enjoyed it, and like I said, maybe next time we have some live audience.
Let's hope for that. Yes.